Morning. I grew up in a very Polish Catholic family, so Christmas Eve dinner was kind of the central social event of our holiday season. 15 of my aunts and uncles and adult family members would bring all of their children to my grandparents' cabin. So there'd be about 40 of us packed into a 3-room cabin, folding tables and folding chairs and lots of food and people. We, like a lot of cultures, fasted on Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve was not fast. Christmas Eve was a day of abstinence, so we abstained from meat. But I didn't know it because it was just we always had just Christmas food, pierogies and sauerkraut and salmon patties and fried potatoes and bread, black rye bread that was just like super strong and potent and delicious and awesome. Before we'd eat, we'd say grace, and in kind of the Polish tradition, the kind of like eldest, most senior man would break this little tasteless wafer called łopatki and share it with his wife, and then she would share it with the person sitting next to her and kind of like all around the table. After dinner, we'd all kind of pack into the cars and we would go to midnight mass, which everyone was at. It's a small town in northeast Wisconsin, so we had nowhere else to go. That's what you're doing is midnight mass. Afterwards, a lot of the cousins would all go over to my Aunt Teresa's house and we would break our kind of like abstinence from meat, and we'd have delicious cold sausages and ham and kind of like start off the Christmas season. So once we got home, opened presents, now that I think about it, it was a real hassle probably for my parents, but like now that I have my 2 children, Gus and Anna, I can't wait. I'm so excited to bring them back home to northeast Wisconsin, kind of relive that tradition with them this year. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank the campus ministry for asking me to share with you what Christmas means to me. When I thought about that, what first came to mind was a number of things, including but not limited to the birth of Jesus Christ. Christmas at our home starts on the first day of Advent, when we pull out the Advent wreath. We have our Advent prayers in the evening, and each week we commit to doing something kind for a stranger or someone we don't know very well. When we were little, we would draw the names of our siblings from a hat and do random acts of kindness for that sibling, such as making their bed. If I ever drew the name of my mom or my dad, I would always make their side of the bed, leaving the other side a mess of blankets and pillows. All that is nice and noble, but what I love the most about Christmas is the cookie decorating, setting up the manger, Christmas decorating, and spending time with my grandparents and zillions of cousins. All those things bring out the Christmas spirit for me during Advent. We also decorate a real tree every year. Our family plays Christmas music, and we reminisce on the significance of each ornament. My mom still cherishes the homemade ones the most, even the junky old one of my 5-year-old handprint from kindergarten. And the tree is never perfect, ever. Sometimes there's a bald area where there are no branches. One year, it seemed that most of the needles were on the ground well before Christmas. And after lugging our chosen tree home, and when setting it into the tree stand, sometimes we discover that the trunk is not quite straight, and we end up with a tilting tree where the star leans strongly to the right or left, instead of where we actually want it. And each year, we hear our parents talk about how much they absolutely love this imperfect tree for that very reason, its imperfections. They say that the tree is a little bit like our family. Well, I have been abundantly blessed with loving parents, 3 amazing sisters, a great education, and everything I need. Our family is not perfect. We have moments during the holidays, especially while trying to get out the door to get to Christmas Eve Mass, where we are not at our best. There's always that one sister who can't find the exact pair of shoes they need for their outfits. And in the end, shoe crisis or not, we often arrive late to Mass. Nevertheless, we always make it to Mass in time for the gospel, or as we call it, Mom's Gospel Rule. We are the family who comes skidding into Mass on Christmas Eve. When we follow my mother all the way up to the front of the church, looking for a seat. Realizing that there are no seats, we turn and complete the dreaded walk of shame to the back of the church, facing the probably snickering congregation who arrived 1 hour prior to the start of Mass to ensure a seat. There's always one batch of cookies that gets burned or doesn't turn out quite right, or someone forgets to feed the dog. What I have grown to love most about Christmas is just that, embracing the daily trials and imperfect parts of our lives, and learning to lean more on God's most perfect gift to us, Jesus Christ. It is through him that all is made perfect. It is to him that we lay down our struggles and our trials and our difficult times in life. We are to embrace our trials in this world in such a way that we are drawn closer to God's Son, the best gift of all. Thank you.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, when I think about my Christmases in England many years ago, I tend to get a little sad, a little nostalgic, because I think about my parents, my mother and father. My father was an Irishman who had a wonderful Irish tenor voice, and I can hear him now singing Christmas carols. He loved to do that. He was a man of considerable dignity and gravitas even, but the sight of him in one of those little paper hats that you would get. Do you know what crackers are? Is that a term that's familiar to you? You pull them apart at Christmas and they make a loud snapping sound, and they have little gifts in them. And but the sight of him in one of those hats is something that was a sight to behold. And my mother, who never ever touched alcohol, but occasionally at Christmas she would have a little glass of wine, and I can just see her face flushed. I remember seeing her with a cigarette in her mouth. I probably shouldn't be telling you all this because maybe I should ask the middle schoolers to block their ears when I'm saying this. As you know, I grew up in England, but I'd like to just finish by reading you a very beautiful description of a Christmas, a child's Christmas in Wales, which is a country, as you know, has had a lot to do with England. We've been together since the Middle Ages, in fact. And I found reading this a lot of resonances in my own childhood. It's by the great Welsh poet Dylan Thomas, who's buried fittingly, I think, in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. So indulge me, if you would, gentlemen and ladies, while I read this very beautiful piece of prose. It was on the afternoon of the day of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Smith's garden waiting for cats with her son Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December in my memory is white as Lapland, although there were no reindeers, but there were cats, patient, cold, and callous. Our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball the cats, sleek and long as jaguars and horrible whiskered, spitting and snarling. They would slide and sidle over the white back garden walls, and the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasined trappers from Hudson Bay, off Mumbles Road, would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. Always on Christmas night there was music. An uncle played the fiddle, a cousin sang Cherry Ripe, and another uncle sang Drake's drum. It was very warm in the little house. Auntie Hannah, who had got on to the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death, and then another in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest, and then everybody laughed again. And then I went to bed, looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow. I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill and hear the music rising from them up the long, steadily falling night. I turned the gas down, I got into bed, I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and then I slept. Very happy Christmas to you all, gentlemen and ladies.
Good morning. If you're wondering why I don't have a Christmas sweater, a point of contention in the Thompson household this morning was when I had discovered my mother had donated all of them to the Goodwill. That was an interesting morning. For those of you that know my mother, you know that she and I love to go back and forth on a number of things, like whether or not I have done my homework, what constitutes a dirty room, what's an acceptable GPA, all sorts of things. But thinking of this reminds me of a Christmas from my past, where this particular argument revolved around whether or not tofu is an acceptable substitute for regular meat. Christmas feast, everybody's sitting down, all five of us, me and my sisters and Dad, and Mother brings out what I assume is going to be a turkey when she lifts up the lid, and in fact, it's a bunch of tofu, which is, I hate to break it to you, Mother, I love you very much, but that doesn't count. I reach for a dish of mashed potatoes and I find beets. I reach for Christmas cookies and I see nothing but kale chips, which is in fact not the same thing. I'm afraid she's devolved into one of those health nut people, which, you know, what can you do? So it was a difficult Christmas to say the least. On top of that, this was Christmas Eve, so I guess it wasn't, technically, well, I'll just call it Christmas because it's easier. So after our meal, she told me that the whole family was going to a Christmas lights show. You know, one of those things where you stand in line for 400 hours and then pay $200 to look at a bunch of lights, which I don't understand why anyone would ever do that. So we're driving through, and I'm complaining in the back the whole time. I'm kicking my sister's chair and pulling on the other sister's hair, and just really being a bad kid. She turns around, she says she'll pull this car over, and then I say, yeah, does that mean the light show is over? So it was an interesting Christmas, to say the least. And we finally get to the end, and she wants the whole family to get out and take a picture. And, you got a photographer there. And they have, those cutouts where everybody can be an elf, and then Dad would be Santa, and the kids would be elves, and Mom would be Mrs. Claus, I guess. And I see Santa's sleigh. Now, to give you some background for this story, I actually used to be a little bit of a big kid. For instance, in second grade, a bully told me to look at my toes to just see if I could find them, which in fact, I could not. But we all go through changes. So I see Santa's sleigh, and like the uninformed second grader I was, I think, hey, I bet there's real presents in there. So scaling up on this decoration, I realized that it is in fact not built to support the weight of a 90-pound second grader, which is what I was. And with the fury of 1,000 suns, it comes hurtling towards the ground, breaking off from the rest of the decorations. And I am lying face down in a snowbank, covered in tears, thinking, man, my mother is just going to, I don't know, something bad. Can't really think of anything appropriate. So we'll just say that. I'm thinking, oh man, now I've done it. There's no more Christmas for me. But I look up, and there's my mother, and the look on her face is one of total distress. She's like, oh, geez, not this one again. I was very well known for hitting my head when I was, in my later years, including on the same radiator 3 times. But the look on my mother's face is one of love and not of anger, and that's really what Christmas is all about, coming together as a family and realizing that even though we love to go back and forth, me and my mother, and we love to give each other a hard time, but at the end of the day, it's all about the family and coming together as one to celebrate this Christmas. So thank you all, and have a wonderful day.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Father and campus ministers, thank you for inviting me to share my memories of Christmas with you. When I think of Christmas, I think of my days in primary school when we were so anxious to finish our first term exams to go for Christmas break. I recall of Mother taking us to downtown Bamenda to do our Christmas shopping for final food items and other needed items. I recall of Mother taking us to the tailor after picking up the cloth materials for our new clothes. I recall the friendly conversations of the tailors as they took our measurements. I recall of times when Mother did the sewing herself as she sat over her Singer sewing machine. I recall how in the course of the year, Father religiously committed us to harvest grass for the pigs and no food to be thrown away, but for the pigs. We needed to fatten it for Christmas. I recall how Mother stitched every piece of cloth with total love, and I wondered how much love she had for us as she made every stitch. I recall the non-stop cries of pigs as they were being slaughtered on the 24th, and chickens that were slaughtered for meals. I recall Christians collectively cleaning the church on the 24th, and also the choir rehearsals. I recall Father assigning us to take small parcels of meat to his valuable family members. I recall Father making sure that we had all special orders for pastries baked and ready to be delivered before Christmas Eve Mass. I recall Mother preparing multiple special dishes before we all got ready for Christmas night Mass. I recall how, on Christmas Day, Mother arranged baskets for us to take to some elderly community members, especially those who were sick. I recall of the many kids and people trooping along to attend the Christmas Eve Mass. I recall of the joyous voices of the community and the choir as we all sang, "Angels we have heard on high, oh, come all ye faithful," and the first Noel. I recall how after midnight Mass, the whole village was full of hometown sons and daughters who traveled from cities to spend Christmas at home. I recall of excited kids being outside beyond their sleep time, the one time that we could be out beyond curfew time, playing with small fireworks. I recall how on Christmas Day, kids from the 13 neighborhoods crisscrossed the village, enjoying themselves and talking and gallantly walking in their new clothes and shoes. I recall how we will visit Grandma in the palace, and our royal uncle will open the palace hall, where all the kids and visitors were all well fed and entertained. Yes, it was a time of communal joy, and as Father always told us before he went to be with the Lord, we all must be happy, for it is Christmas.